Welcome back, recruits. I'm Chris Nance with the Northern California Ghostbusters, and today we have something that was sent to us from Danny over at Redman Studio Workshop. Huge shout out to Danny. He has been totally awesome with providing us with several of his parts and kits for videos so far, and we really love working with him, so big thank you, Danny. And this time, what we have is actually his aluminum Haslab trap base plate replacement and upgrade. We are going to be showing you how to actually install that today. So, with that said, let's get going. So, here in my hands you can see we've got Greg's trap, which is still completely stock. We haven't done anything to except take the screw plugs out. The bottom plate is completely stock. I should specify, because people who are watching already know that the light on the top is on the battery box.
Oh yeah, I'll stock on the bottom, and we also destroyed all the screw plugs on mine.
But that's okay, because we're gonna get rid of them. Anyways, so here's Greg's with all of the stock bottom plate intact still, basically, and then here's mine that I did yesterday. Last night with the full Redman kit installed. This is the like Afterlife Frozen Empire style one, so it's got the bigger, chunkier wheels. Sort of similar size to what comes on the stock ones, but these are actual like ball bearing wheels, so it's gonna roll a lot smoother and longer by comparison to these guys, which are, I was describing them to a friend yesterday as being kind of like how the wheels on a Tonka truck are put together. Yeah. It's basically the same design.
And like in the kits, the only difference between the kits are the wheels.
Yes.
Right. So there's an 84 kit and Afterlife, and the only difference is the size of the wheels.
And there is a little bit of a shape difference to the replacement axle piece. You can see when I hold them next to each other that the Afterlife Frozen Empire ones are bigger and square, as opposed to the 84, 89 ones being a little bit smaller and rounded. And that's entirely just to allow for the space and size of the wheels. The other big thing to take note of too, just looking at Danny's kit, is you're trying to go for more of a 100% screen accurate look. If you look at these ball bearing wheels, they have these little rubber inserts to cover the ball bearings, and that's to keep dust and everything out of there. The screen use traps on Hero traps on Afterlife, they have the covers taken out, so you can see the ball bearings. That's why we have these sort of balls cast in on these fake ones, is to sort of replicate the appearance of that. So if you're going for that, I think you would be able to just take some like very fine tweezers and yoink these out on the outside, and then you'd get that look. The only thing with that is be careful about rolling it through dirty areas, because now you've got exposed ball bearings and you're introducing dirt and dust into the grease of the ball bearings and their action. And that gets into its own whole host of problems.
It would be bad.
As always, Danny's kit came all really nicely packed and sub-compartmentalized. I kind of have things partially unpacked here, but you can still see some of his hardware and parts and stuff are all nicely bagged up and set aside here for when we're ready for it. Everything that you're gonna need for this, you're gonna want a couple of screwdrivers, preferably something that's a little bit longer and thinner, because you've got a couple of really deep screw wells on the Haslab trap. You're gonna want a couple of, some sets of Allen wrenches. Unfortunately, my Allen wrenches are a mess. And I wish I could give you more guidance as to what size wrench we're using where. That is not going to be the case today. As always, I'm gonna go with the one that fits. You're just gonna need a drill with an 1/8 inch drill bit.
Hey, you knew the size for that one.
Yep.
You did. Yeah.
So if you're working in metric, that's a 0.1250. You're welcome, Britain. Once you have all your tools, our first step is actually going to be these guys. This is like one of the parts that I think is probably most impressive in this kit are these little resin printed pieces that he has. I don't know how well it translates to camera, but like resin printed pieces have like such high fidelity just coming out of the print. They come out really, really beautiful, just like very smooth, very like subtly striated.
No lines, yeah, there's no 3D printed lines.
Almost none, yeah. You have to look very, very close under direct light to see it. That means also that you can print with very, very tight tolerances. So you can print things to fit together basically with pressure right off of the print bed, which is nice. So what we need to do is, once everything is fully assembled, these wheels are gonna go on these ends here, right? Now, we're a little lucky in that we've got one of our axles is already pretty close, just right off the print bed. One side is perfect, one side is like 1/8 of an inch off. So we're gonna have to do some sanding on this side. I'm gonna leave the wheel on the good side.
You had to sand a little bit on the Afterlife kit, right?
On the Afterlife kit, I had to do a pretty good amount of sanding on both axles. So, second axle, same thing, almost perfect on one side, but just like 1/8 of an inch off on the other side. So we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna leave one wheel on, just so we know which side is good and doesn't require any extra attention. And then we're gonna take some very fine sandpaper. In this case, I'm working with 180. You could arguably go a little bit more aggressive than this, say like a 160 or a 140 or even like a 120. But if you're comfortable and know what you're doing with sandpaper better than I do, have fun. So we're taking some fine grit sandpaper and all we're gonna do is I'm gonna take it, wrap it around the side that we know needs a little bit of sanding. And I'm gonna try to sand all the way around and apply as much even pressure as I can, which is kind of tough because this bit is not very, oh yeah, look at that. Right off. One we have sanded down so that the wheel will fit all the way to the axle, and then the other one we haven't sanded at all yet, and there's still this little 1/8 of an inch gap there, right? So all we're doing is sanding that spot just to smooth the print lines out a little bit and get the whole surface down just enough for the wheel to seat all the way down. So this one's done. I'm gonna do the same thing on this one, and then we're gonna take both outside and hit them with some paint primer. And in fact, because it's a nice day out, the whole reason why we're doing this part first is theoretically by the time I'm finished with everything else and we need to pick these axles back up and actually install them, our paint's gonna be nice and dry. Next step, now that our axle pieces are all ready for paint application, first you wanna wash these. So now that it's been rinsed nice and thoroughly, we're just drying this the super quickie way. We're gonna take some hangers. Best way for these.
Those are just coat hangers?
Just pieces of wire that we have around that I've bent into like S and U shapes and different shapes and sizes and stuff, so I can basically hook it and hang it to dry. Got our parts, got our paint. And you'll notice, like, I'm specifically centering all of my paint on the center, the part that you'll actually be able to see if you turn the trap over. The painting part is literally just to hide that it's resin. So we're gonna leave those to hang and dry while we do all of our other work, because actually assembling and attaching the wheels is gonna be basically our very last step. You will notice first and foremost, if you have not done any modding to your Haslab trap yet, the thing that's gonna look different on Greg's trap is going to be that he has all of his screw plugs taken out.
Destroyed.
We have shown in a previous video how to correctly take those screw plugs out and how to take the bottom plate off. I'm going to
leave a link in the description. I'll leave a link in the description below.
Greg will leave a link in the description below
to watch how to do that.
To show you how to do that.
But otherwise, you're just gonna release these screw plugs and then unscrew the screws.
Yep.
Which Chris is gonna show you how to do right now.
Yep. So we're gonna start by taking the cartridge out. So that's a bunch of extra weight that we don't need, and it makes it easier for us to turn the whole thing over on top. So first, we're gonna pull the V-hook. That's these two screws right here. So there's your V-hook out. Do not worry too much about keeping track of your stock hardware, all of the screws that you take out. Danny has very helpfully provided almost all of the hardware for the bottom plate gets replaced with what Danny provides. So there's only 2 screws that you have to keep from the stock hardware. And it's actually pretty easy to keep track of like the pile of screws that they come out of. So with the V-hook out, getting the whole bottom plate unscrewed. This cover plate also needs to come off, so these 2 screws as well. So, once all your screws are removed, you're going to go ahead and lift the whole bottom plate straight up, and you're going to get the most resistance back here because you've got these 2 long posts and then some sprues underneath. And you want to be careful while you're doing this because there's wiring attached.
The speaker wire.
So you can see there's the speaker fully attached. There we go. Now we have full access there. Now, so I gotta get that unclipped. So there's also the wire connection for the rumble motor back here. And you can see it's looped around this ribbon cable, which I'm sure does a lot to kind of keep that cable out of the way. But in this case is actually kind of keeping it in our way. So I'm gonna try to unclip this without ripping these wires out, if I can. There it goes. So this was behind this clip, and all I did was get it flat and then kind of yank it out. And that's to give us some room to work, really. Next step here is we're going to take out the speaker mounting, and then we're going to take out these 4 screws, and that's the only thing holding the bottom plate onto the upper plate. And then that gives us even more freedom of movement here because we don't have to worry as much about breaking the speaker wiring. I was pleasantly surprised that I didn't have to worry too much about manipulating mine without breaking the speaker wire, because we have had issues with that on some of these Hasbro props in the past. Okay, so there's that guy free. And then we're gonna work on these 4 screws here. All of these guys that I've just taken out of the bottom of the trap, they're what, maybe 1/4 of an inch and have these like really broad threads on them. So you're gonna wanna hang on to 2 of those specifically. We're gonna leave all of this connected. We are not actually disconnecting any of the wiring for anything. We're literally just moving stuff out of the way. At this point, if you look at the way this is put together, we've got a couple of different posts that stick up from this piece through this piece. This piece we're keeping, this piece we're getting rid of. So we need to separate those 2 pieces, right? They're not glued together, thankfully. They're just kind of pressure fit. It is a little fiddly trying to get them to separate. However, long-time watchers will know that I like to use flathead screwdrivers to do stuff. And that's what we're gonna do here. So we're gonna take a nice fine little flathead, get down in that edge there until we get it past the other edge. And that's gonna give us a nice wide gap so that we can work our way around and get it to release and come apart. Look at that. Very little effort involved. All right. Voila. So a little bit of struggle separating it, but it is very doable, I promise you. With our bottom plate split apart, we have these guys. This is all trash. We're gonna get rid of this. First step in actually installing this, and this is where it gets a little tricky, because as you can see, we've got the bottom cover for the battery box and then the bottom plate for the whole thing. This guy seats in first. Now the simple, straightforward way to do this is to put this guy in place first with his cover. So we come in like this, and voila. And then we'll take the 2 longest screws that Danny provided, and they're gonna go all the way through here and then down to the mounting points here inside the trap.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's hard to see on camera, guys. Hold on one second, let me see if I can get that bright for you.
Right there, and
Yep.
right there. There and there.
Now the problem is if we put the battery box and its plate into place right now, right away, we're gonna have to force feed this ribbon cable back through like a very tiny gap. So how I'm actually gonna do this is we're gonna get the bottom plate into place. We're gonna put this back, or the plate for the battery box into place. We're gonna put the battery box back up against the whole bottom plate assembly. And then we're gonna make sure that our speaker goes through the hole. That way, it'll all go together like that, and we don't have to fight the ribbon cable. We're gonna take our hardware bag that's got all of our screws for the project in it. And we've got 3 different screws here to work with. You should have 4 cap head screws, 4 black button head screws, 4 washers, and then you're gonna have these silver button head screws, and you're gonna have, 6 shorter ones and 2 longer ones. The 2 longer ones are going to go in these 2 holes here. Okay, so we have that in place. Now we can move forward. First step is we are going to take one of the axles and we're gonna put it right, so you can see these sort of spaces where the wheels, the stock wheels sat, where the axle for the stock wheel sat. What we're going to do is we're going to take one of our new axle covers, we're gonna put it right over it. That's where it's meant to seat, right? And just right away, it's a nice little pressure fit, so it doesn't wiggle around or move too much. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our drill with an 1/8 inch drill bit, and
It's Chris's favorite thing to do.
yeah, I'm gonna put a hole in
You
it.
can put a hole in it.
I'm gonna put a hole in it. And then, so you'll notice just now I went kind of slow. Yeah, I didn't go as hard as I could right away because I didn't want to jam all the way through and damage anything underneath. I don't think there's anything really delicate under there on that part in particular, but still. So we're just gonna go nice and slow. And then we're gonna do the same thing on the other side. Now that those holes are drilled, we're gonna start looking at actually reassembling our bottom plate. If you take your stock V-hook and then you take that spacer piece, you'll notice that it's recessed on one side and then flush on the other. The recessed side is gonna go right over these little dimples. So the flat is on the outside. We're gonna install this first, and then we're gonna put it on the actual trap. So the wide end is towards the front of the trap, and then the skinny end is towards the handle side of the trap. So we have a short and a long screw. Our short screw, we are not gonna put a nut on, and it is meant to basically just sit flush with the surface of the plate once it's installed. The location, if you look very closely, is it basically sits like right on the lip of the speaker. So the idea is that we're trying to use a short screw that's not going to damage the speaker.
And this is a big shout out to Danny's engineering too, because
Yes.
the 84 trap, the wheels are a lot smaller, which means there's more engineering work to be done for it to fit on your belt holster.
Yes.
So props to him for figuring this out.
Yeah, this is all like really cleverly designed, to be honest. Like, it is very, very impressive what he's done. So I'm just starting with the short screw because we're not going to be nutting it. I can just kind of get the V-hook attached to the spacer. That's how it is meant to go together. And then once that is together, you can see, so there's that bottom screw just flush.
Perfect. Long screw goes on the bottom. Yep, there you go. So that's your alignment for you kids out there looking.
Yep. Now, this is where it gets a little tricky if you're doing this on your own. If you were doing this alone, I recommend having a C-clamp for this bit. I did it last night, and this is how I figured out how to put it together for myself. We're gonna C-clamp it onto, to hold everything together for us. C-clamp holding things in place. You want to try to leave the top of your screw exposed so you can use a screwdriver to hold it. And what we're going to do is we're going to get our nut started. And then we're going to take a screwdriver and a socket driver. And it is a long screw on a nylon stop nut, so it's just going to take a little bit. But you can already see I'm getting to the bottom of where my socket driver can hold. Yep. We're going to have to switch tracks here, Greg. So socket driver is too shallow for us to continue. I switched over to a socket wrench, something that I can
Hold and then screw on the other side.
Exactly. With the V-hook installed on the plate already, we're now ready to get the speaker mounted into the correct place. Now the first thing, we're going to take the speaker mount that Danny provides. You'll notice it's kind of offset on its brackets. It is going to seat in like so. The offset side is going to go towards the front of the trap, and the brackets are going to sit right on top of the screw holes, the two middle screw holes. Now, when you go to actually put the bottom plate on top and put those two middle screw holes in, those are going to be the screws that are actually going to hold the whole speaker mount into place. We're going to seat it like so, and it's going to seat kind of nice and squarely. With the speaker mount in place, we're going to take the speaker itself, and we're going to seat it right on top of the mount.
And it just rests there. It's not.
It just rests
yeah,
there.
It's not pressure fitted or anything.
It's not really pressure fitted. It does kind of lip under these two corners here on the top. Otherwise, we're just getting the wires through the access cut on the side. And then very last little detail here is we're going to seat this little piece of cloth on top.
Danny includes that in his kit, which is pretty.
That's part of the kit, which is
really
a nice little detail. Now with that in place, we can put the plate down. And now we're going to take those not as long silver button heads, and these are going to be our screws in place of the stock hardware. So, because we have to capture the speakers, I want to make sure that the speaker mounts are trapped in the middle here before I get everything locked in. So I'm going to start with these two middle instead of the corners like I normally would. And I'm not going to tighten these guys all the way down because I want to allow any kind of play or wiggle room that I need for the corners. So instead I'm going to go around and get all of the corner screws started.
Can your hands be smaller so I can see what you're doing, please? Thank you. Thank you.
No. So all I did was I started at the center two screws. So I was making sure that the speaker mount was captured by those screws. And then once the threads on those were started, I started at the corners, and the whole way I didn't tighten everything down on the last couple of threads until I had screws in all of the holes. And then once that was the case, I went around and tightened everything down nice and evenly. So now we've got a nice solid aluminum base under there.
Make sure you yell at Chris for not going diagonal on the screw tightenings in the
yeah.
comments below.
Yeah, blame my ADD. Our very last step here is going to be to assemble and attach the wheels and axles. Now, if you've been following along here, you should be able to take your axles and just pop the wheels right on their end spokes pretty easily. And what you will notice is that your axles are already threaded, which is another nice little touch from Danny. And we're gonna take our button head screws and a washer. Once again, I don't know what size Allen key, just the one that fits. And then that's how we're gonna actually lock our wheels onto the axles. So they are not just a pressure fit, they do have that screw and washer holding
Screen
them in
accurate
place.
too, right? For these ones anyway.
You know, I'm not certain offhand. I don't think so. It's similar.
Let us know in the comments if you know the exact parts to the 84-inch screen accurate trap. We do know they're ball bearing wheels. We've seen those, but
Yeah, sound off in the comments if you're anybody besides Aces.
who knows all the things.
We already know you know the answers. Wheels and axles are assembled together. Get that off there. Now we can go ahead and put them where they are meant to go. Oh, I broke off a tiny piece of the resin. Whoops. Oh.
14 days. Do you have to?
Oh.
Does that count? He broke a piece of the resin off. 14 days is pretty good, man. Don't beat yourself up.
That was. Well, fam, we had a good run.
We have 14 days.
So this is actually, in fact, this whole step. So this whole step is the part where we kind of want to start actually be a little bit careful. So what we are going to do is the holes that we have created underneath these is not tapped. However, the plastic is soft enough that we can take some steel, or I'm assuming steel.
Now, when you say tapped, that means they're not threaded, right? Not
Right,
pre-threaded.
there's no threads there. Now, because it's plastic and soft, we can take some steel screws and use the threads from these to force a tap there. That said, that means that we are adding stress to the plastics involved, and you want to go slow and not overstress it. So go slow, and when you are at this point where you're actually attaching the axles to the trap itself, what I recommend doing is coming down so that you are on level. And Gregory, if you want to bring the camera down here so the audience can see this little bit of gap here. That is what we are watching as we force the screw into the thread.
I went vertical by habit. Okay, there you go, got it. Okay, so you're gonna show me how to...
Yeah. So, yeah, and we're just gonna get it started basically. And I'm going to use a similar method to what you've seen me use already. Just gonna get this guy started, and then I'm gonna get the other one started, and then I'm gonna tighten both down simultaneously. That way we are reducing some of those stresses that I mentioned and keeping things relatively even. And that is how you install the Redman Studio Workshop Haslab Trap bottom plates. Full bottom plate and wheel upgrade for your trap. Very, very simple kit. I really like the way that it's put together, the way that it's designed. It's got a lot of precision parts to it that are pretty impressive.
Beautifully designed.
Very well designed.
Beautifully designed.
Very,
yes.
very well designed. If it didn't require a little bit of drilling, I would almost call it a drop-in replacement, because for the most part it is. Absolutely gets my stamp of approval. I think Greg agrees with me. You agree, Greg? All right. NorCal Ghostbusters stamp of approval. Thank you very much, Danny. So Danny did send us these kits for free. Very awesome of him. If you want to get it for yourself, you can get the all aluminum kits like we've shown here in the video. Those run $75, and there's two different versions. But he also has acrylic, black acrylic kits instead of aluminum, and those run for $65. And if you don't want to go to all of the trouble of replacing the whole bottom plate, but you want to replace your wheels, he also offers just a wheel and axle replacement kit, and that runs $25. And of course, Greg will have a link to his store in the description below. And as a little thank you to our fans, if you'd like to take a nice little 10% off, you go ahead and use NorCalGB10 on Redman Studios website when you check out. We're not getting any commission off of this. Danny simply sent us the code so we can kind of help track metrics. It helps us all keep track of how many of you go to his site from us.
From our video, yay.
Yay. With all of that being said, until next time, I'm Chris Nance with the Northern California Ghostbusters, and we'll see you later, recruits.
But at 19%, you didn't even bargain with the guy.